So, on some level, identity politics works because it allows stupid people to never have to confront the challenge inherent in their own stupid behavior, and they can just blame everything on a kind of cultural or societal structural oppression. So you imagine, like, entrepreneurs quite often have to deal with the pressures of starting an enterprise. Sometimes even if you get everything right, you still fail. But a lot of the time, the lapses from one's own avoidance of dealing with challenges and confronting them and naming them correctly, and the challenge of naming a challenge correctly. If you just want to get into easy reactive scripts that give you a sense of rightness instead of actually finding a way to overcome or something like that. It is true that some businesses you have to know when to step out of, because the conditions, the greater conditions, are just not, there is no market, there is no sustainable market there, or there is a competitor that is just far more effective than you can be. But generally speaking, if you set up a business properly, and at least if the market doesn't completely dry up, small businesses usually outcompete big competition. They can do that. They can have smaller profit margins depending on how they're set up. They can offer more personalized service. They can do things. There's quite a lot that can be done. And all those challenges can't even be identified or met when you have this systematic thing that, no, you just need to copy what already works out there, and that the only reason why it's not working for you is because of some kind of structural oppression. And so failure goes under the column of somebody else's fault. There's something else to blame. And so often it's a kind of subsidized stupidity that you can just blame everything out that is outside the identity, and that there should be a stronger system of support, of in-group sympathy for propping up the identity in some kind of artificial transformation. Which usually gets out of control at some point, because it has to keep on growing, and it has to keep on deforming common sense to fit the script of the narrative of being victimized by the system and by the structure, until you have a structure that's set up that's completely controlled by an orthodoxy, by some kind of dogmatic narrative. And to make everything fit into that narrative means that everyone has to represent their identity. You can't have anyone that says, no, I'm beyond identity. You have to call those people privileged, essentially, and racist. And so it has this kind of lowest common denominator. It forces everyone to kind of have that same way of interfacing with reality. Everyone has to be that kind of model of mediocrity. There's not allowed to be any expertise in the system, in some sense. You can't define yourself as an individual. It's not allowed. And so the concept of integrity gets completely deformed, that everyone must accept the ideological version of integrity, that kind of counterfeit integrity under the banner of their representative identity. And then you get the kind of the fascist vision is the only some kind of fascist compromise, which when you try to do doesn't work because you can't get a rainbow Hitler that mediates between the different factions. And so you end up having to separate people more and more just so that they don't influence each other, so that there isn't the bad cultural appropriation.